I'm going to be world number one tennis player.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with Mark McMahon at the time when he was one of the coaches at the State Academy, and we all had to write out goals, and we're sitting there and everyone wrote out their goals. And then before we even like told him what our goals were, he goes, put your hand up in this room if your goal is to be a top 10 tennis player. And I reckon like 80% of the room like put their hand up, and he goes, scrunch up that piece of paper and do it again, because I can guarantee you for 99% of people, that's an unrealistic goal. And I was just like, I was a 14-year-old kid, man. And I was like, wow, like that's pretty mean, but you know, like it's true.
It is true.
You've got to have realistic goals.
Yeah, just right. Welcome to another episode of Going Pro, and I'm super stoked for this one because we've got someone that I've known for a very long time, a man called Jordy Decandia, that some of you might know him as Mr. Vacay. He's co-founder of Vacay Swimwear, which is an Australian brand that meets high standards, comfort and style through the creation of unique male swim and resort wear. And that's gone global. It's born and bred from you and Jordy here in Adelaide. And yeah, you've just taken the world by storm. But a lot of people might not know you have a full-on tennis athlete journey.
I do, yes.
That people may not even heard about and think of like, you played tennis? Like what?
Yeah.
No way. So that's something that I really want to tap into. So can you break it down? I think we played maybe first time when I was like maybe 10, you were 10. I remember like up in the hills, we played on a really windy day.
The Schlesinger Tour.
The Schlesinger Tour back in the day. Can you paint a picture of what it was like in the early phases of your journey? What made you get into tennis, and was it really serious for you, and how did that unfold in the early stages?
I don't recall what actually made me get into it, to be honest. I just remember in my street hitting against the wall with a racket and really loving the sport and watching, the Aussie Open, and at the time like Hewitt dominating and Aussie tennis just being like this huge thing. And then just reaching out to my mum and just asking if she can get me into a local club. Like I didn't know what the process was for that. So she just called up a tennis club and, started getting lessons as young kids do. And within like 6-12 months, I just like fell in love with it. Like I was obsessed. I've always been like a kind of guy that, when I love something, I just kind of like would obsess over it.
Yeah.
And it just became like part of my life, man. Like it was, like I was sleeping with my racket, like to the point where I wanted to be, world number one, like every young aspiring tennis player wants to be. And then within, I was a pretty fast developer. So within like a year or two, I was already playing tournaments. That's where I would have met guys like yourself. And I just fell in love with the competition and, it being a sport which is so individual, because I was used to playing like football and basketball and all those kinds of team sports. And just from there, man, like there was no turning back. I just loved it.
Yeah, I think the individual nature is very intoxicating for a lot of people. Once you get that feeling after being in a team sport and then feeling that it's all on you, it either makes you or breaks you. You either go, no, I can't hack this. Or you either go, well, no, I absolutely love the fact that like, this is on me and I'm just going to ride those waves and win and ride the waves of being high from the big wins or the lows from the losses. Was it that thing that kind of you fell in love with early on and just that competitive nature of the individual sport? Yeah,
it definitely was, man. Like I fell in love with it, like I said, from the moment I picked up my racket. And then once you got to go to these kind of tournaments and you see all these other kids and the competition and even more so the competition, just like meeting people. Like I've always been a very social kid. So like I love that aspect of, just creating new mates and training with new people and playing people from all over Australia and internationally as well, and the different styles of games that were out there, and I just found it such an interesting sport. And like a lot of people, you would probably agree with this, like they see tennis and they think it's a pretty basic game, but when you really like break it down, like there's so much that goes into it, the training that's involved. Like I would, as a young kid, go to the Aussie Open with my parents, and I would almost love sitting out on the outside courts and watching the pros train more than actually like enjoyed the games. I love the games as well, obviously, but just watching like the likes of Nadal and Djokovic and all these guys like just out there hitting balls and like the drills that they were doing and the hard work that they would put in. Like I was just obsessed with it, man. And I don't know how else I can describe it, but it was just like a sport where I just found it so like bloody interesting.
Yeah, it is really like that, the depth involved. And I think we can all agree that people that have that tennis background love going to the first week of the Aussie Open and just seeing the outside courts, like the kind of people that maybe are up and coming that people don't know about, and just watching the training. It's that stuff that we find really interesting once you have an idea of the game. I want to know a little bit more about how what your training was like, and how it was, I guess, like between the ages of like 12 and 14 when it started to really ramp up. When you go, you get a sense of like, I could actually do something here, because you were training with some of the best guys here. You played nationals. What did your training look like? How committed were you? And were you starting to believe that you could actually go somewhere with it?
I think once I joined, at the time, I think it was called the NHPA, which was like the National High Performance Academy, which they brought into all the states. Once I joined that at about 13 years old, obviously I was training with like the best guys here in SA. At that point, I started to believe that I really was like a pretty decent tennis player. And obviously the coaches there, like they pump everyone up and they think that everyone's probably better than what they really are. But it was a great kind of culture to be in, and it was like hardworking, and there was a lot of pressure as well from a young age. So I kind of like got used to that. So at about 13, 14, when they started, scheduling out your tournaments and pretty much treated you like a young professional, it was at that point I started realizing, I was probably the upper level of a junior tennis player. So from about 13, 14 onwards, when I started really, traveling Australia and started to get some decent results and getting noticed, that's when I kind of realized like this is what I want to do. So from about 13, 14, man, like I really thought I was going to become a professional tennis player, to be honest with you.
Yeah, wow.
And it's not till much later in the journey, which I'm sure we'll touch on, that I kind of realized maybe, this isn't for me, or, there's other things out there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there is always that belief when you're young to go like, wow, like I can actually do something here. And I think that's important.
It's an amazing thing as a kid, man. Like you honestly think I'm going to be world number one tennis player.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with Mark McMahon at the time when he was one of the coaches at the State Academy, and we all had to write out goals, and we're sitting there and everyone wrote out their goals. And then before we even like told him what our goals were, he goes, put your hand up in this room if your goal is to be a top 10 tennis player. And I reckon like 80% of the room like put their hand up. And he goes, scrunch up that piece of paper and do it again, because I can guarantee you for 99% of people, that's an unrealistic goal. And I was just like, I was a 14-year-old kid, man. And I was like, wow. Like that's pretty mean, but like it's true.
It is true.
You've got to have realistic goals.
Yeah, as a coach, I think you've got to be mindful of crushing kids' dreams. I think as a coach, you want to be realistic with the parents. I'm not sure if I agree with like crushing the kids' dream. I think it's important to let them really like dream big, but then couple that with let's work our absolute ass off for this.
Yeah, well, that's true. Like I've always been like a realist as well. So I've always known like, some things are too good to be true. But I always understood that, working hard, no matter what it is, you can achieve like great things. So I always knew that, being a professional tennis player was potentially a possibility, but it was probably at that point where I realized, okay, like, being number one in the world may not happen, but, you can still make a pretty good bloody career out of it.
Absolutely.
So it was something I was still very heavily interested in doing at that time, until I kind of lost a bit of interest at that 13, or not 13, sorry, probably like that 16-year age.
Yeah. This is just a quick note on our podcast sponsor. This podcast would not be possible without the support from 4RT. They are a creative house that helps businesses with their advertising, marketing, and content needs. If your business has a story to tell, then these guys can really help you with that story. And through ATA, they've helped us massively, and we trust these guys dearly, and we feel like they're the best in the business. So they could add a lot of value to your marketing and advertising needs.
Yeah.
I want to. You spoke about Mark McMahon,
Yep.
a coach from here. I want to touch on, are there any influential coaches that really stand out to you, and why? Like, what did they teach you that kind of stands out still to this day?
It would probably be Mark McMahon was one of my private coaches who I had for a number of years. I don't know what in particular he said to me that really stood out, but he was one of the guys that, had been to college, had taken that route and really kind of helped me like push into that area. Obviously for a lot of kids at 17, 18, going pros, not even an option. And he kind of instilled in me as well that, getting a degree and exploring your options is probably one of the best things you could do. So he really helped me in that area. And then also Martin Richards as a junior, mum just called Broadview by chance and he was the coach that was there, and he kind of built me up to, a 12-year-old player that was pretty decent. And then from there, Mark kind of just was able to grow me into that next level of player.
Yeah, I think those messages of trying to have a backup and not just putting all your eggs in one basket and trying to get a degree is really important. I think too many tennis players at a young age just focus on tennis and just forget about schooling. And then they get to maybe like a low-level professional and they're like on the ITF circuit, but they just can't break past like maybe like 600.
And it's a tough sport, man. Like a footy player, like in an AFL team, there's 18 teams. There's probably about 40 guys on a roster. All those guys are getting paid a pretty decent livable salary. Most of them more than a livable salary. Whereas a tennis player, you could literally be 300-400 in the world, sometimes even in the 200s in the world, and living on 2-minute noodles and not making a cent. And it's so like wrong.
Yeah.
But it's so real as well. Like it's a tough world.
Bro, we could talk about that for hours and how that needs to change. And yeah, slowly there is change from the Players Association and how that money is going to trickle down. But yeah, that's the archaic nature of tennis and how it is so hard. And there's only money at the top.
Imagine being the 200th best tennis player in the world and you can't make a living out of that sport.
Yeah, we talk about this with our mutual friend Theo all the time, and he says, like, if you're that in soccer, you're getting multi-million
You can be sitting on the
contract.
bench, not even playing, and you're on hundreds of thousands of euros a week. And it's just, and that's a team sport where you can, you can shine off other great players in your team's success. And I'm the same, man. I'm pretty passionate about how wrong that is. But hopefully some things change.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. I mean, shout out to Papa Jay and Angela, your dear parents. What role did they play for you to really help you go to the high levels? Because I think the role of a parent in tennis is critical.
Oh,
it's so important.
They played probably the biggest role out of anyone. As you would know, tennis is a very expensive sport.
Yeah.
Without funds, it's almost impossible. So, I mean, I would hate to know how much money as a kid they spent on my travel, my equipment, my coaching, just driving me around on a daily basis from school to training, from training to gym. Honestly, without their help, I wouldn't have got to the level that I did. So I'm extremely grateful for them. And, I have them to thank for all the experiences and, they were great. I don't know what else to say. Like that.
Were they hard on you in any way?
Not hard, but they would know that, if I didn't give my best, like I could lose and play great and they were completely fine. It was when I'd come off court, if I had a bad attitude, if I didn't give my all, they were the times they'd be upset, but they were never like crazy, crazy sports parents that, I wouldn't, I'd have to walk home or anything like that, which those parents are definitely out there. But they'll never, you could tell they were upset. But no, they were very supportive.
Yeah. I think that's really positive parenting, is the ones that don't get too involved in the tennis and more just like upset if you don't give your best or if you show a poor attitude, and almost like a sense of disappointment. Say, hey, like we're here supporting you. All you need to do is just give your best, and whatever happens, happens.
And that's what they were like. I think their biggest disappointment was probably at 16 when I wanted to give it away and did give it away for a year or so. breaking it to them, man. The conversations by the couch every single night about like, are you making the right decision? You're, throwing away all your hard work that since you were, 11, 12 years old. That was what they were most disappointed about.
Yeah, wow.
I
want to touch on that in a moment, but before I do, I want to ask, like, what were your best attributes? What made you a good tennis player, and what held you back? Looking back from that time.
I've always had really good hand-eye, so like my hitting was never an issue. Like I was the type of tennis player. Obviously, I was tall and athletic as well, which obviously helps as a tennis player. I could match it with the best guys. I was the type of player where I could beat anyone, but I could also lose to anyone. So I had some, throughout my junior career, had some awesome wins against like some really top Aussie juniors. Then at the same time, the next day I could go out and lose to someone which I knew I was much better than. So I was very inconsistent if you look at it that way. And I think a lot of that came down to just my mindset. Like I was probably pretty weak-minded. Like we spoke about off camera, I was probably one of those tennis players where you could walk past my court and, I'd be up about to win in straight sets, but you'd think I was losing just because of the attitude that I was kind of carrying and moping around and thinking about all the bad points and not how well I was probably playing in other areas, and probably didn't pump myself up enough. And it goes back to me being a realist. Like I was always just so hard on, areas of my game that I knew I wasn't playing well, and I thought I was going to go out every game and just play a perfect match. And I remember there was another coach that once said to me, like, the best matches you win are the ones that you win when you're not playing well. And once I kind of understood that, my mindset got a little bit better. But definitely as a junior, man, that was the one thing that held me back, I think.
Did you have anyone to really teach you or guide you in that way?
In terms of mindset?
Yeah, mindset.
At the time, no. There were a few like sports psychologists that came in, more so in group sessions when I was at the State Academy. But no one that really like pulled me aside and said, look, if you want to get to the next level, this is what's holding you back. Obviously, my parents told me.
Yeah.
But as a young kid, you don't really listen to your parents too much. It more so needs to come from an exterior source. So that was definitely the area. Looking back now, that really probably inhibited my game. But as a kid, it's so hard to make a change like that, especially when you're not mature. Like I was 14, 15 years old. And, it's really hard to make those changes at that age. And the guys that are good and the girls that are good are the ones that are so mature-minded and able to, understand feelings on court. And an individual sport, man, there's, in an hour or two game of tennis, there's so many obstacles and roller coasters that you have to go through, and some that are in your control, some that are completely out of your control. And it's a really hard sport on the mind. It's 90% above the shoulders.
Yeah. Once everyone can hit a ball, then
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like I could, and yourself, like we could go out there and hit up and down the court with Rafa and, hold your own. It's not until you get into like a game where you get absolutely wiped off court and, all these other aspects come into it. That's the funny thing about tennis. Like everyone's got the skills, everyone's got the shots, everyone's got, especially at that level, everyone can move, everyone can hit the ball well. It's what is above the shoulders up here that, separates the good from the great.
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, what would you actually change, or what would you like kind of say to your young self on to how to manage those situations or change those things?
I think the easiest thing would just be, losing matches at 16 years old don't matter. At the time, like you think it's the be all and end all. And that's kind of why you're getting so frustrated and anxious in a game and so upset. But I mean, looking back, it doesn't matter at all. You see like the life of a professional tennis player these days. Like I went to the Adelaide International this year and I watched Rublev lose 2 first rounds in a row. Top 10 tennis player, lost first round week 1, first round week 2, moved on to the Aussie Open, and I think he made, was it the quarters of the semis or whatever it was. So there's always the next match. It's like a golfer as well, like you may play horrible in one tournament, a week later there's another round, and great things can happen. And they don't seem to care so much about the losses at that level, which is weird because you'd think you should care about it more as a professional than what you do as a junior. But you're never going to not lose in a sport like tennis. And it's the people that can understand that quickly are the ones that can really excel. I think like you learn more from your losses, as cliche as it sounds. But it's just a game, and then you wake up the next day and, it's a new day. And as a junior, I just didn't think of it like that.
Yeah. I'm guessing that kind of like really filtered into like form slumps because you just be down on confidence, just letting those losses linger on rather than just like shake it off.
Yeah.
New day, like let's just keep on going. The nature of tennis just to keep on going.
I definitely lingered on, matches, and then, the next time you'd play that kid in the tournament, it's all you're thinking about, where, tennis players today, they're probably just more, leave it in the past and move on, the good ones anyway.
You started to touch on the moment when you fell out of love with the game. So what happened there? You were going great, and then 15, 16?
Yeah, it was about 15, 16. To be honest, man, it was just, I just had that kind of FOMO. Like I was watching my friends, at that age, you start going to parties and going out, and I was missing like, school formals and just all these events in your life that like, you think as a kid you should have. My friends are going to a formal while I'm in, a little apartment room in Sydney, like playing a tennis tournament. And at the time I just thought that, that was more important. And I got to a stage, I actually got injured as well, which kind of didn't help the situation. So I had a bad stress fracture in my back at about 15 or 16. So that put me out for a year. And in that year, obviously I was able to go to these parties and hang out with my friends and, do things that a normal teenage kid does. And I just realized that like I've missed this, I've missed this life of socializing and just being a normal kid. And that's kind of where my love for a little while was lost. I think I just burnt out, to be honest with you. Like I was just training so hard as a kid and probably overtraining as well. And that's where that year of no tennis pretty much came from.
Yeah, I mean, this speaks to the unique nature of tennis. Like if you look at a bunch of the guys on tour, they're kind of a bit weird. They're kind of a bit weird and crazy because you don't have a childhood. If you want to go to those levels, goodbye childhood.
You got to sacrifice so much. And I probably wasn't willing to sacrifice everything.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these good kids that probably came from nothing and had no other options apart from tennis sacrificed everything. And, that's all they wanted. And I was probably a bit spoiled, man, to be honest with you. Like I, as a kid growing up, I had a lovely childhood and, got everything that I ever wanted. And I probably didn't think of it as, how many people I was letting down but by just throwing it away for that couple of years.
Yeah, I think at that age you start to really realize if you really want it or you don't. And there's people who just want it more than you and they're going to put in the sacrifice. Yeah. And if you're not, then the sport's just not, you're not cut out for those levels.
Yeah, because I'm sure you took some time off. I do remember like there was a time where you, even in your juniors, took a bit of time off.
I had a really interesting journey because I wasn't very good because I was tiny for so long. And then all of a sudden around 16, I grew a lot. Like I was a very late bloomer.
What years was it where you like started, enjoying the gym and doing all that stuff?
Probably around that time. Like
you'd stop playing then, I'm sure you had.
I was just training a little bit. I never kind of stopped playing, but I didn't like fully take it seriously where I would just...
You weren't playing tournaments or anything like that?
I'd just play a little bit here and there because I was like trying to go to uni and trying to gym, go out, and then I would just like enjoy playing matches on the weekend for like club competition. Yeah, okay, and then I just never really stopped. I just didn't play full on for a while. And that kind of kept me in it. And I think coaching as well kept my love for the game because I was like in it while helping others. Sure. And it made me feel like I was enjoying it. But I never really had that feeling of like, I hate the game. I'm going to stop for a year or two.
See, where my story was more just I got completely burnt out and I lost love. Like I couldn't handle watching tennis.
Yeah, okay.
I couldn't handle like the conversation in the house just being about tennis. I just didn't want anything to do with it. And which I thought was, now looking back is crazy because even now, like I don't play anymore. I don't pick up rackets, but I still have involvement. Like I still keep up with scores. I still love watching tennis on TV. And it will always be a part of my life. Like I still catch up with my tennis mates on a weekly, monthly basis. But at the time, man, as a 16-year-old kid, I just didn't want to know any more about it, you know.
It's fair enough, man. Like you went through a pretty intense journey, and that can take its toll. And when you're missing out on stuff, like it's hard. But that started to change again because you went to college. Like you played college tennis. So how did that change? We took that year off when you
so probably at about so I reckon I stopped playing at 15, and I reckon by about 16 and a half, I made the decision that going to college was what I wanted to do, and playing tennis, and I wanted to get back into it. I found that love again for it. So I started playing tournaments again, training hard, really wanted to put in a good solid couple of years while I was, year 11 and 12 to really give myself the best chance of, getting a good scholarship and going to a decent school. I wanted to go to a Div 1 school, obviously, because it was good quality. So I put in a lot of good work in year 11 and 12, started playing tournaments again, started getting some good results, obviously was playing state league and everything else. And then after year 12, I had a few offers at a few different schools, decided to take one. And then that's where my college journey kind of kicked off.
What was that like? How would you describe what it was like being at college and playing and training there? Like, what was the training like? What was the coaching like?
Full on. Obviously, I was used to it being a junior that was in those academies, but college training was full on. The way I like to say it is you are training like a professional, you're just not getting paid like a professional. So you'd wake up in the morning, you'd have like weights at 5, 6 a.m., then you'd go back to your room, get ready for classes. You'd have classes probably till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you'd probably be at training from about 3:30 to 4 till 6:30. So you'd have 3 hours on court, and then sometimes you'd do fitness after that. So like running, a lot of cardio, and then you'd go back to your room, go to sleep, do it all again the next day. So it was a very full on, experience. And everyone there was very serious. Like the coaches were serious. All the players had bought into that mindset. And at the time, I absolutely loved it. I was fit as, I was playing great tennis. And it's an excellent culture to be in. Like if you're a kid that, wants to continue to progress as a tennis player while also getting an education and potentially going on to pro after that.
Yeah, it's such a good pathway. Especially if you want to have a degree, and I would recommend doing that if you're still on the fence of whether you're going to take that path or not, because it just gives you options. But being in that environment, you get a sense of what it's like to be a pro training then, and you kind of like, it's like an apprenticeship to see if you are going to go,
if you're made out for it. And I probably in my second year, you would know, man, like there's so many good players in the tennis world. And I was training really hard. It really helped my doubles game. I became a really good doubles player. So I was playing good doubles, but singles, I was probably sitting at number 5 or number 6 in the team and probably winning like 50% of my games. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, you're not even winning that much and you're playing number 6 and, you're winning 50% of your games. I'm not going to be a professional tennis player. Like, it's not going to work. I could potentially try for a couple of years and make no money, and then I'll come home and I'll be 3-4 years behind everyone else, chasing my tail, trying to build a career. So 2 years in, I just kind of realized that it wasn't going to happen. And that's fine. I'm glad I made the decision when I did, because you can get stuck in a nasty, rabbit hole thinking that your best form is coming.
Yeah.
But I think I'd kind of reached my limit at that point, and 2 years in, just kind of realized that was it, and decided to actually leave college and finish my degree back here in Australia. But I don't regret any of the decisions I made. I'm so happy I went to college, and it was obviously a great experience. The people you meet, the training I was exposed to. It was a great experience, man, and I would never talk bad about it to anyone. And I would do it all again.
Yeah, I mean, life has a funny way of giving you these little tests and these moments to see what you're all about. And I think what you did there is a true like indication of that test to go, am I going to take this pathway or not? And you had that I guess like looking at yourself in the mirror in a moment to go, nah, like I'm not cut out for this, and it's just there's so many good players out there, and I know that I can't. This pathway is not for me.
Yeah, I didn't want to be one of those guys that was 600-700 in the world. Still a great tennis player, but 600-700 in the world, playing futures all over the world. With $100 in my bank account, not making ends meet, man. Like that's not what being a professional tennis player was to me. I love the game, but like living that type of lifestyle, I wasn't attracted to that.
Yeah. It's a real journeyman mentality that like
living out of a van,
it's real like a traveler. Like people do that without tennis and they're just full, just like hostels, traveling all different places, backpacker, and kind of tennis players do that. Yeah. Through tennis. It's a pretty sick, cool lifestyle.
It is.
If you don't want that, then, and you want to have a career and you want to have some money behind you, you're not going to get it through that. You're going to have some sick experiences.
Oh, you have great experiences, which will make you into a great person. But I just wanted to start building a career. Like I just wanted to finish my degree, get a job, and just start living a normal life.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's the realization that I had pretty early on as well. To go like, if I ever take that pathway, I know I'm not going to be anywhere near the levels.
Like, do you regret not going to college?
No, I don't. Because I wasn't ready. I was too immature. I was too young at the time. I wasn't ready to take that pathway.
If that was an option for you, say like now, would you?
I would definitely do it. I would definitely do it. I don't regret anything that I've done on my journey. Like I went to uni. I did uni here while also building like a coaching apprenticeship, and it's built me to be who I am today. But after uni, I made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to get into work unless I did club tennis in Germany, because that's something that
because you did do that.
Didn't you? So club tennis in Germany was a sick experience. I think that's another pathway that we can talk about as well. That's like subset to the college journey that a lot of people take. And there's so many good players there. And then you have access to other countries and tournaments around the place. But I want to talk about, how did this really evolve for you? Like what happened after college? Like once you made that decision to say like, nah, like I'm not cut out for this. You came back from college. Where to next from there? How do things start to change and evolve to say, once you committed to say like, I am going to have a career?
So I came back. I still had 2 years left of a degree. So I came back to UniSA, finished my marketing degree, and halfway through that marketing degree, I was literally just planning on getting a job, maybe in fashion or working at, like a tennis company, or working for a tennis, like a Babolat, being a marketing manager for Babolat, or working for the AFL or something in sport or in fashion, like two industries that I always had interest in. And then just the idea of starting my own business kind of popped up, and that's kind of how I fell into that. But that's, it's an interesting one, man. Like I finished my degree, I think it would have been 2016, and then got straight into my own business 2017. Well, and the foundations of building that obviously had started in my last year at uni, which was in 2016. So I just kind of finished my degree and just went, straight into it.
Is this the building blocks of Vacay?
This is the building blocks of Vacay.
Like how did that start? I really get curious to understand what are like the initial phases behind building a business, because it's all just ideas in your head and then you start to like put plans together. Like what was the building blocks in that time, and how did things start to evolve to build into something? Well,
at the time, man, I was a 21-year-old male that had no idea it was just an idea. Like you said, it was, started just finding a name and planning a logo and working out what kind of products we're going to sell. And it was completely and utterly just an idea. And then it just slowly grew. Like it was a very slow process. And then that's kind of how it grew into the brand that it was. Like my partner Jordy that I work with, we were studying together at uni. So in our last years when we decided to do it together and grow it. But it was a slow process, man. Like the first year or two was, we both had part-time jobs and, we weren't making any money at the time. With most startups, like you're investing a lot into the business and it takes time. And So we both had part-time jobs, and it just kind of went from there.
I think that's like something that the younger generation, talking like I'm like 40, 45 years old right now.
We are kicking on, man.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. That they just kind of want things now. They want to do this startup business, just like become fucking famous on Instagram, for example, right? I think they forget the idea that you got to have something funding the business. Like you both had part-time jobs funding your ideas in the initial phase, and just know that things take time. Probably the amount of work that you've done to get it to where it is just like probably astronomical.
It is, yeah, and it's like anything. Whether it's sport like tennis or it's business, it takes time. Everything takes time. The amount of background work I put in, even to this day, like I'm still working nonstop, answering emails at night. It's a grind, man. Like even you with your own tennis business, like the amount of work behind the scenes that goes into what people see is just crazy. And I love it. Like I've always loved working hard, and I've always been a very organized guy, probably through my tennis, having to juggle, school and an elite level training and being away, all that kind of stuff. So I had the fundamentals in place to be able to succeed. So once I, continued to work hard and, started seeing the results, it just gave us the fuel to continue to grow the brand.
Yeah, that you just touched on something that I think is actually quite important. So for me personally, tennis has taught me so many life lessons that have made me become such a, I guess, resilient, strong, responsible person to like withstand challenges. And it's really helped me a lot. And I talk to parents about worst case scenario, your kid doesn't go pro, doesn't go to college, but learn some incredible life lessons along the way. And you just touched on that. What lessons have you learned from tennis, and how has it actually helped you apply those lessons to business that you're doing now?
Obviously, learning that hard work, how important it is to put in hard work. As a junior, I had to juggle my schoolwork, traveling, the pressures of competition, being able to time manage. Time management was another quality that I built from tennis. Being able to deal with pressure as a young kid, like a lot of people aren't exposed to that as well. So pressure, time management, hard work, determination, having to get up early as a young kid. And, I had to find time for homework when I was training before school, going to school, getting picked up from school, going to training, getting home at 7, 8 p.m. at night, having to find a window to do my homework, go to sleep and do it all over again. And that builds serious skill set for like a young kid that, you can't waste time. So I was very like efficient, whether it was through my training or through my schoolwork or through my, diet or whatever else. And they're all skills that I learnt from tennis.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really important for anyone that just is on a tennis journey to know, like, it's not for nothing. You're actually learning some amazing skills. You touched on pressure. I think the ability to handle pressure and how much pressure you face in all matches and how you overcome that is something that I think a lot of people lack, that they don't actually have something in their life that they're getting exposed to large amounts of pressure. I think that can make a massive difference.
Oh, it can.
For like something challenging like what you've done with Vacay.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I face pressure and, on a daily basis. And look, I'm not one to say that I'm the best person that deals with pressure or anything like that, but obviously I've had the building blocks in place from a young age that's allowed me to deal with it and overcome it. And I honestly think pressure is a good thing. Like it means you care, first of all. Like if you're getting nervous about something, it means you actually care. And it was something from a young age I've been able to instill in myself to be able to, overcome obstacles and, improve as a person, as a business owner, just on an everyday basis.
Yeah, that's really awesome. How does your business partnership work? Like, obviously you would have strengths, Jordy would have strengths and weaknesses. How do you guys come together? Because I think a lot of people, when they go into a partnership, maybe don't understand where their strengths and weaknesses lie and how they can actually come together to bring something strong?
I think the first most important thing is understanding your own skill sets, your own strengths and weaknesses. I obviously have my strengths and my weaknesses. Jordy has his, and I think being able to have different strengths is a great thing. There's no point going into business with someone that you're both good at the same things. You want to be a more well-rounded unit. So being able to go into business with someone that, even in your industry, you may be a better public speaker than your business partner, or you may be better at dealing with kids' emotions than your business partners. Just having a more well-rounded unit is obviously much more helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think you need to be clear going into that and mapping that out, and actually just having just robust, honest conversations. Say, hey, like I'm sick at this.
Yeah.
What are you good at, and how can we kind of come together and fill the holes a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
No, lovely. So we know probably like most businesses fail. Maybe not most, but a lot of businesses fail in the first 3 years.
Yep.
Like it is really, really challenging to get something off the ground and get it going. So how and what has made Vacay successful to withstand those 3 years and then come out the other side and start to become super successful, not just like here locally, but like now internationally?
Well, obviously in the beginning it was hard. There was obviously melting points at certain times in those first couple of years.
What did that look like? I want to dive into that.
Oh, what did they look like?
So it would have been excruciating. What are some of those melting points? It would have been really, really tough.
Well, as a young, naive kid, like you think, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to sell thousands of products overnight. And when you wake up the next morning and realize that's not going to happen, we had like these crazy goals set in place for like the first year, and I don't know how we thought of these because they weren't even viably possible. But he's laughing over there. But it was just one of those things where we hadn't reached any goals in like the first year or two, and we just felt very, crushed.
Yeah. Like the tennis journey.
like the tennis journey, man. And I remember sitting there with Jordy once, 2 years in. We'd put in so much hard work. Like there was nothing more we could have done. And we just kind of looked at each other and thought, like, should we keep doing this? Like, what's the point? Like,
we would have had so many of those moments.
Yeah, and there were. Probably not as many as you'd think, but there was one clear moment, and this was the one I'm talking about, where we just kind of thought, like, man, there's no point doing this anymore. Like, let's, we've given it a chance. It's not working.
What a moment right there.
Oh, well,
talk about tests and life.
We left that meeting that we were going to end it. And it wasn't until we went home that night and kind of, thought about it a little bit more, that we realized, like we've had some great moments throughout these first couple of years, and, it's let's not kill the dream too soon. Let's keep it going. Let's be proud of what we've done. And luckily we did, man, because I reckon within the next 6 to 12 months, some great things happened. Like we got a contract with the Iconic, as a young brand. Like that was a huge thing. And then just people started to notice the sales started to slowly increase. And then one thing led to another where it just continued to grow.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the business side of how you seal deals with someone like the Iconic or other brands? How does that work?
It's all relationship building, man. With anything, you've got to know the right person, get in front of the right person, share with them what you're doing in your story, and you've got to make them want to fall in love with what you're doing. So that's pretty much what's involved. We had no sales agents or anything at the time, so we were just going out finding these people at David Jones and these people at the Iconic, and just sending emails and trying to call them and getting turned down a lot in the beginning. And just continuing to persist and, not taking no for an answer. And one thing would lead to another where we, landed the Iconic and then started doing well there. And then David Jones kind of took note of that, and then they wanted to jump on board. So we jumped on board with David Jones. And now 6 years later, we've got retailers in Europe, Canada, Indonesia, and doing big numbers in the US as well. So all that that has just come from just meeting people. Like I've met a crazy amount of people through my tennis. I've met a crazy amount of people just through business. And that's kind of what I've loved about both of those aspects of my life as well. Like just the ability to meet people. And I'm such a social person, as we have touched on, that I've just met so many people. My network now is just so big that I love it.
That's really, really cool. You touched on rejection. I think that's something that we had an earlier guest that really spoke about, the rejection aspect in acting. And I just think that is something that is so important, that you gotta be okay with that people are not gonna vibe your idea. They're not gonna get around your idea, and you have to accept that. And that shouldn't deter you. And you just gotta keep going. You just gotta keep putting yourself out there, and that eventually you're gonna meet the right person. And kudos to you guys to just not being okay with that and going like, we just got to keep going. We just got to keep beating people and putting our face and talking to as many people as possible.
Yeah, well, we were passionate about what we were doing, and we knew it was a good brand and a good product, and we knew it would succeed. So we never doubted our own brand, and it was just more so being able to make other people believe that as well and buy into what we were doing. So I completely agree. Rejection, you're going to get a lot of it, especially in business and on a daily basis most of the time. It's how you kind of can deal with that and, use that as fuel.
What made you say that your brand was different? Because there's so many brands out there. What made you say that your brand was different to others, and why did you have this belief that it was going to work? What was it about Vacay?
I think we got in a perfect time. To be honest, if Jordy and I were to start this business today, it probably wouldn't take off the way it did. We started obviously in 2017. At the time, especially in Australia, there weren't too many big men's swim brands out there. People were still obviously either wearing their soccer shorts to the beach or were wearing board shorts. There wasn't really those fashionable shorts. So we entered the market here in Australia at a really good time. And I think that was a pivotal moment in the journey that, there was a demand for it at that time, and it was a niche. And that's kind of where we saw the opportunity. So I don't think if we were to start it now, it would probably have the same effect. But over the years, we've built up such a brand and a culture now that it continues to do well in this time.
You're speaking to such a valid point. Yeah. I mean, you got to do your research. You got to figure out where the holes are in the market in anything to figure out what is missing and how can I actually bring some value to this area. And if you can't do that, then it's going to be really challenging to succeed because there's so many people doing the same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
So how did you do the research? How did you figure out you were just passionate about, you didn't even have options for yourself?
The only idea was that I was heading overseas and I was looking for obviously some swim shorts to bring, and I was, just scouring the internet as you do, looking for things. And I couldn't really find affordable swim shorts. There was boring solid colors and obviously board shorts as well, which I wasn't into. There was no just real exciting, vibrant patterns on a mid-length swim short. Especially in Australia, there wasn't. I knew there was some European sites that were doing it and whatnot, but in Australia there was pretty much nothing. And that's what kind of drove us to come up with the idea and start getting samples made. Got samples made initially just for ourselves to take away, and then friends started to notice and they liked them, and one thing kind of led to another, and realized, we're kind of onto something. And that's really my own experience of being able to find that it was a product that was in demand. Well, not so much in demand, but a product that hadn't really been, touched on and had been brought into the market at that time.
Yeah, I can completely see how you would have had so much confidence in it, knowing that there isn't this product out there. So it would have been so sellable to others because you had so much belief in it. And it almost wouldn't have been selling, you just saying facts hey, this product isn't out in the market and we need to get it out there, and you're passionate about it. And I can completely see why that would have been attractive to people like the Iconic, and why you seal deals like that.
Yeah, it was. And as I said, I don't think if it was to start in 2023, given the way the world is now and how many other players there are in the market, it would probably have the same effect. But we got in at the right time, put in the work, and 6 years later, like, we've got that track record behind us, and we're able to achieve great things.
That's amazing. I want to touch on like how you use social media and what is the e-commerce world like. I mean, people have these grand ideas about making a lot of money through e-commerce, and it's really tough. Like, what would you recommend, or how do you actually make money through e-commerce, and how do you use social media to grow your business in this way? Just a disclaimer for everyone listening, we had our video cut off in this conversation with Corey, and it's a little bit frustrating. We're working through these technical difficulties. We're on our way, but please, if you're enjoying the conversation, flow through. The audio is all good, and we hope you're listening, because there's so many good things that he had to say today that we'd love you guys to listen to. Enjoy.
Well, up until having obviously wholesale, like, we started a completely online business. So before, the likes of David Jones and all these other retailers that now buy our products at a wholesale, we were solely online. So social media and, paid advertising was all we had. And that was the only way we were getting people to our website to buy. So it was the most important thing, and still to this day is probably the most important part of our business in bringing in revenue. And at the time in 2017, no one really knew much about it as well. E-commerce was still relatively new, and people didn't understand, Facebook and paid advertisement and what it took to do that. So Jordan and myself just kind of had to learn that just off our own backs, man. Like, there was no tutorials online or courses that you can, buy these days to do what we did. It was just more trial and error and working out what worked and what didn't. And it just kind of grew from that.
That's fantastic. Oh, just the amount of work and legwork you did just to kind of figure things out in the early stages. Sounds like the perfect storm of a few things kind of coming together.
It is, man. When something great happens, obviously there's a lot of, it's a perfect storm. Everything has to come together. And I guess that's kind of what did happen for us to achieve what we have in the last couple of years. But it was all new to us. Like, I didn't know anything about business when we started, didn't know anything about how to create a product, didn't know much about branding. Yeah, I had a marketing degree, but I mean, as I said, online advertising and that was so new that whatever you did know was probably old traditional print media ideology and didn't really work in today's world. So we just learnt everything on the job. And, had to take the bad things happening for us to work out what does work and what doesn't, and be able to go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were there any mentors or key people that helped a lot on this business journey to help you get to where you are now?
At the time we started, probably not. Probably just more everyday successful business people who were able to help with, just like managing cash flow and all those kind of aspects. But there was no real mentors in the e-commerce field because no one had really done it prior to us. We have a few mentors now of some people who are doing great things in the e-commerce world who we reach out to for advice and answers.
How do they help you?
Oh, just their long road is obviously someone else's short road. So the same way it took us, years to work out that we shouldn't be doing this, but we should be doing this, I could now share that to someone else and save them the time, So someone who's done great things in our industry is able to share their knowledge of, a one way of doing thing that can save us time, can save us money. And then obviously just giving us the advice of what to expect. Like, there's a big difference being, like a small brand going into becoming like a more mid-sized brand to becoming a larger enterprise. And, obviously your mentors change throughout those stages because you might outgrow them. Right now we've got a couple mentors which are really have done crazy and much greater things than us, that are giving us the advice that we need to, obviously continue to grow.
Yeah, that's really important. Just being able to be a sponge for those sort of people that have been on the journey longer and have had more success in the areas that you're in. And for example, like in the tennis space, I want to give the kids I work with so many more tools to be better than what I was and am, so that they can learn faster. The thing that everything I've learned on my journey, I want to give it to them so they can learn faster and be better. And that's what we seek in mentors, is to be able to have those people that have been on the journey that are just going to give you everything you need to go where you want to go. So what's next for you, man? Like, I mean, you're doing great. Things are growing really well for you. But like, is being a massive business what you even want to do? Like, where is business and life taking you? Where do you want to go with it?
Obviously, at the moment, we're in a pretty heavy growth phase at the moment. So we're just continuing to try grow the businesses as far as we can. That's probably for the next 5 years or so. Just continue to keep hustling and, just working hard and maximizing as much of growth and success as we can. Outside of that 5-year plan, to be honest, I don't have any idea what I want to do after that. But I love business. I love sport. I'll continue to stay in that industry, whether it be this or something completely different. But right now, our focus is just on, I love my day to day. Like I live a great life. I don't have to sit at a desk all day. I can do pretty much whatever I want. I love going to work and working with our staff and, building the brand and meeting new people. Having your own business gives you, the opportunity to, go play golf on a day if I want to play golf, or be able to travel the world and go to some amazing places. So that's the lifestyle that I live at the moment. I can't fault, and I love it. But I'm not too sure what's next. Just hoping to continue to grow the brand, and that's the plan.
Yeah, I think for anyone listening that really that life that you've just explained is appealing, what advice would you give to people if they wanted to embark on an entrepreneurial life where they can run their own business and have more of their own lifestyle and schedule?
First of all, I would just say do it. I had to jump out of my comfort zone to obviously start a business. Like, I was 20, 21 years old, barely had any money to my name, and had to invest obviously to start the business. So I didn't have a great deal of, capital to begin with. And I took that risk to throw it all into a business. Mm-hmm. So I would say if you're young and you're, at uni or you're finishing uni, now's the time to obviously do it. Mm-hmm. A lot harder when you're in your 30s and 40s and you've got a mortgage and, a family potentially, and you've got probably a lot more to lose. Not to say that you still can't do great things and take risks. I still think you should take calculated risks, but I think I was the perfect age at 21 to be able to take a chance. And if it didn't work, like you said earlier, like I had things to fall back on. I had a degree under me, so I could always gone back into a marketing job. But advice to someone that's wanting to start, I would just say, have a solid plan in place and just go into it. Like, put all your time and energy into it, and the more hard work you put in, the more you're going to get out from it. So I'd really that would be my strongest bit of advice to give to someone.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think starting early, like you did at 21, when you just don't have like massive responsibilities to your name, I think absolutely go for things. I think your 20s are a great opportunity to try so many different things, and just take life by the balls and go for it.
I agree, man.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice. I love everything I'm hearing, man. I'm super stoked that we got to do this today, and just hearing all the life lessons that you've learned through tennis, how you went through the college journey to know, like, being a low-level pro is not my thing. I feel like I got more things going for me, or I feel like I can do more in a different space, and applying those lessons of like just scheduling, time efficiency, really using hard work as the crux of building what you've done with Vacay is really inspiring to people. And I hope people can listen to this and go, I can do something really, really cool, and I can do it on my terms. And there is opportunity to do it, and anybody can do it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important for people to hear. So thanks again for being here, man.
Mate,
I really
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. I'm glad we did this. And I just wish you nothing but the best.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And obviously this is an awesome podcast that you're doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing you continue to grow with it and make it a household name, and love what you're doing in the tennis world as well. So, keep going. Love it.
Appreciate it, man.
I've actually got you a gift before we end.
Oh, here we
things
go.
here.
Oh,
Vacay, so
Oh, yeah.
make sure the camera sees it. Give us the plug,
I
man.
actually think dude, that's hilarious because I actually think that the camera turned off. It's an absolute crack up right now. But if the camera was on, you'd see an amazing bag, a Vacay Swimwear bag with just some goodies in here that I can't wait to whip on at the Aussie beaches. Thanks again, my man.
No worries, mate.
All the best.
Thank you.